What is org mode and how can help with local agents? Org files, they look like simple text files, but they actually contain a lot of rich elements. In org, I can run bash. So for example, let's call this endpoint and get all the available models I have in the system. Now, I ask a Python program to calculate the token per second of the deployed models. I want org to visualize this information and be able to use it for further documentation. From the same org file, the same information can be exported as a presentation where you basically divide all of your sections into slides. You can export it as a blog post with all the necessary links to the project you're working on. From text, you can get diagrams. Out of files, you can get mind maps, where you basically have a complete overview of what you're writing, how things are connected together, how complex is your project, and be able to navigate the structure of everything you're basically doing, understanding what are the weak links and what is important to keep on developing. In org, anything is text. Text which you can display as a table, as a graph, or much more complicated diagrams or flowcharts. This text can turn as well into animations, and you can decide to use the same material for making a much more advanced visualization and prepare videos like this one. Org is so rich that we can run project management, we can create knowledge and presentations, compute, write technical documentation, reports and dashboards. Everything we write in org can be tagged with agenda entries. We can put dates, date range, efforts, schedule and so on. Every time we work on a single section, we can log in the time we spend on the single section or the one the agents will work on it. We can as well create clickable items where I can start working on a task and then click on the other one and have in my logbook the time while I was working on this activity. Out of these dates, we can run some real project management. Language models will help parsing the org file and then create a Gantt representation of the current status of the project. While we work at the org file, we can tag the single sections with dates and then log everything we do and have the current status of the project plan in this Gantt fashion or in Kanban view. We can visualize math, we can solve integrals and then have different languages supporting our calculations. We do have a really rich markup language and we can as well produce music. It's easy now to understand why org files are so much more powerful than Markdown. Markdown is like a cookbook, where you read the recipe, you take the ingredients and then you start cooking. Org is rather a spellbook, where you directly invoke the code. You can get pretty excited while creating an agent, instruct it and then relax, but then you realize you're losing control of your single agents, and when you want to fix the code, you rush reading a too long book to be understood. When you work with public models, you don't pay only the model, but the complete infrastructure, on top of running the risk of any security leak. And imagine how would you feel when you start seeing the code of somebody else in your IDE and the support not knowing what was the reason for that. Okay, but we know that local models are not as capable as frontier models. Is there a compromise we can do? Or those models are not capable enough to run on our laptops or on our small cluster? Is there a way we can connect this org mode to agents so they keep the consistency and they become real productivity boosts? For that, we need to work a bit to make the system a bit more efficient. We don't have these super capable models guessing and understanding what we want to do and then basically starting creating tons of code and test it over and over until it comes to reasonable results. We need to contain a bit more those agents and then give clear instructions. To set it up, we do have containers so we limit the access that those agents will have. We basically provide the few volumes that the agents should read. We can stop the container anytime we have issues with performances to benchmark and run the models on my local laptop and on an NVIDIA Jetson on my desktop. We decide what tools the agents can see, and we don't want to confuse the agents. Agents, being in containers, won't access any password or credential files because they're completely out of the reach, and this increases safety on top of running local models. And I can really restrict and define the capabilities they have. And that helps a lot to increase consistency and productivity of those agents. To work at best with org files, Emacs is a great tool. Emacs has interactive coding, so I can send Python regions to the shell. I can do the same with Bash and Node. In Emacs, I can integrate language models into my working flow. I can ask models some general questions. Those models will have the tools as well connected in the MCP hub, where I can see the status of all the services connected. And in any buffer, whatever is Python or Bash, I can ask questions and have all the agents working in the background. The same I can do it with the coding agents who will have an integration inside of Emacs. It has a native org mode which makes everything easier in terms of editing org files, executing code, exporting and such. LLMs contain a lot of knowledge, but the coding assistant has the capability of making the tests which are important for the validation of the answers. This is why I'm using PyAgents, either Emacs and OpenCode, integrated within Emacs to be able to develop the code and understand what agent is most suited for what kind of task. In this setup, the user writes to Emacs. Emacs will update the org file. Org will use tools. The output of computing, calculation and web will be put back into the org file, which will be interacting with Emacs. LLM agents will update the information, update the database and the current knowledge base of the project. The user will keep on only interacting with Emacs. The markdown and the database will connect with the LLM agents to orchestrate the overall project, and everything the user sees is Emacs, while in the background the rest of the services will run. The current configuration is represented in this network, where I can visualize the different connections that the system has. Basically, the user writes to Emacs. Emacs will have access to tools via the org file. The results of all the computing calculation and database information will be outputted back in the org file. This can be used as well for the monitoring of the system. Everything is isolated and secure. Everything is local and controlled by a single source of truth. What I've learned running this project is there are a lot of side benefits in working in this implementation. I do have much less search, less dependencies, less archive, confusion and processing. The source is just a couple of org files which I can as well sync remotely on my web dev server and then have accessible on my cell phone. The nicest part is the development framework flips around. You don't start coding, you start thinking. And as you think, you write everything into the org file. As you write, your tasks in terms of writing code, writing documentation, project management will kind of come along thanks to the integration between agents and org mode. This is just a short introduction. The rest of the documentation is linked below.